In this video, we're going to look at the VLOOKUP function. The VLOOKUP function, V stands for vertical. It's a vertical lookup function, as opposed to the H lookup, which is the horizontal lookup function. Once again, they both work pretty much the same. Well, what's the purpose of a VLOOKUP? Well, the purpose of a VLOOKUP function is to move information or data from one table to another table. And more specifically, the purpose of the VLOOKUP is to move data or information from a table array, from the table array to another table. So the key component here is the table array. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight for our example what the table array is. It's this area right here that I've just highlighted. It is a table. However, and this is very important, anybody familiar with databases, you're going to notice that I did not highlight the two field names. So I highlighted the entire table except for the two field names. This is our table array. Now the field names for any type of a table always describe the data that is in the column associated with the field name. So for instance, we have the field name %. That entire column should contain percentages. Likewise, we have a field name called letter grade, and that entire column should contain letters. So once again, we've highlighted the table array, and I keep on repeating this word because it throws a lot of people when they start hearing a table array. It's the array part that throws people off. Once again, it's the table, the fundamental table that is the basis for the VLOOKUP. And what we're trying to do is moving data or information from that table array to some other table. A few other things on this table array. You cannot have a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP if you don't have a table array. So it's the most important element of that function. The first column for your table array should be sorted in ascending order. In this case, you can see it's starting off at 0, going all the way up to 100. So that's very important. That first column also serves as the link between your table array and your other table. So the first column, once again, it should be sorted in ascending order, and really what it serves to be is a link to your other table. When you look at your table array, we can see that it's composed in this case of two columns. Okay, once again, we're talking about a vertical lookup or VLOOKUP. Column 1 has all percents in it. Column 2 has your various letter grades. So it's made up of two columns, and I mean that's very important also. So let's begin with our example. And this is a fairly common example that most students would understand. In this case right here, we have 20 students, and the 20 students have these 20 grades that are listed. It's the end of the term, so the professor needs to know what is the associated letter grade with each of these percentages. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a VLOOKUP to determine what those letter grades are. So we're going to begin right over here for the first one, being student 1, he received a 20%. Well, what is his letter grade going to be? We're going to click on the f of x. We're going to type in here VLOOKUP. And once again, I've just recently used it, so it's already appearing. So you're going to type in VLOOKUP if it's not already appearing here. Click OK. And our dialog box appears. There's 4 lines that we're going to have to fill in. Line 1 is talking about what is your lookup value. And it's explained right over here. But for our purposes, our lookup value is going to be this 20%. We want to try to find out for that 20%, what is the associated grade going to be. So our lookup value in this case for that first line is B2. Line number 2 for our table array. And we've already talked about that. So we're going to click in line number 2 for our table array. It's explained over here. But this is the key element. We need to highlight what our table array is. Once again, I did not highlight the field names for my table. The key element here, after defining that table array, once again, it's made up of 2 columns. 1, 2. I've highlighted it. I need to lock in my table array. And how I do that is I make my table array an absolute. So I'm going to tap F4, or function key F4. Function key F4. By tapping that, we now have our $ before our columns and also before our rows. So once again, what we did is we highlighted our table array, and what one of the most common errors are when using this function is to forget to lock in those values. So you always have to do that. So I tapped F4 and made my table array fixed, or an absolute. So we've done that. The third part is the column index, and a lot of times that throws people. Well, what are we talking about here? What the column index basically is saying within your table array, which is made up of 2 columns, column 1, column 2, what column within that table array has what you're looking for, has your answer. It's not column 1. What we're looking for is the letter grade. So within my table array, the letter grade is in column 2. So that's all I got to do. I'm clicked in here, type in my 2. Next, I'm going to go into the range lookup. And the range lookup is described over here. The range lookup, by default, if I leave that blank, it means that I'm looking for an inexact match. And in this case, I really do want to use an inexact match because my table array is only listing a small amount of numbers that I could choose from. If my table array listed 0 all the way up to 100, I'd be all set. And I could go with an exact match. But I mean, we need to use an inexact match. In order to get an inexact match, you can either leave it blank, or type in true, or type in 1. In this case, I'm going to just leave it blank. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go up here to my first entry or result for my function, go up to the fill handle and drag it down. Now, some people will say, well, why do we have, and is there a mistake here? We have one NA. I'm going to center that too, so it's easier to follow. We have an NA here. The NA is associated with a -6. So what's really happened here is that if you look for a -6, it would not be contained within my table array. My lowest number is 0, and it goes all the way up to 100. So it's something to really kind of look for. Once again, if you ever want to see how that function is constructed, you can click on FX. And it's telling me my lookup value, my table array. That's the key. And we need to always lock in that table array. And we do that by tapping function key 4, F4. We have to define our column index. That always applies to within your table array, which column contains your answer or what you're looking for. In this case, we're looking for a letter grade, and that's column 2. Range lookup, I left it blank because I'm not looking for an exact match. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, highlight everything here, which we have the correct information, highlight it, then we're going to hit the delete key and get rid of all the information we just did. And we're going to do the VLOOKUP again, but this time we're going to create a named range for our table array. And what I recommend strongly is to use, whenever possible, if not all the time, use a named range for your table array. The reason being is that by using a named range, by default, everything is locked in. You don't have to start tapping F4 to make your table array an absolute. For this next example, we're once again going to use a VLOOKUP function. The only difference being is that we're going to identify our table array, and for that table array, we're going to create a named range for it. So our table array will be a named range. Now, the value of doing it this way is that once we've identified that table array, it is automatically a fixed value. It is automatically an absolute. We don't have to worry about going back and highlighting everything and making sure that we tap the F4 key. So, the key, no matter how you look at it, what is your table array? This area right here. That table array is still made up of 2 columns. Here's my table array. I'm going to create a named range, so I highlight it. I'm going to just call it my first name, Kevin. Hit enter to make sure that it did actually take place. I go up here, hit the down arrow. There is a Kevin. Click on it, and by clicking on it, my entire table array is now highlighted. So once again, we've identified the table array, and we've made it into a named range. Let's come up here again. We're going to use our V lookup, f of x, V lookup. Our lookup value is still going to be the 20%, which happens to be in B2. Second line is a table array. Now, once again, I could just type in Kevin, or if I tap function key 3, F3, we'll end up coming up with a listing of our various named ranges. We only have one here, so it's Kevin. Click on it, OK. Within my table array called Kevin, which column contains, once again, here's our table array, which column contains our letter grade? Still going to be 2. Our range lookup, we're looking for an inexact match, so I'm going to leave it blank. Click OK. Come to my fill handle and copy that pattern down. Now, just to show you, to edit that example, I'm going to come up here and click on the f of x. Everything's going to change. I'm going to leave it all pretty much the same here. Lookup value still B2, table array is Kevin's, column index is 2. But this time, I'm going to look for an exact match. Okay? An exact match. Now, I can find an exact match by typing in false or 0. I'm going to put in a 0. And all of a sudden, now I'm going to copy this down. I'm getting a number of NAs. And the reason why that's happening is because I'm looking for an exact match. So I'm saying 20. And it's looking over at my table array, and there are no 20s listed in it. That's why it's an NA. Likewise, the 66, it's looking over at my table array, and there is no 66 listed here. 65 comes over, looks, and once again, it did find a match. It grabs the value from my table array, which is a D+, and moves it over here. Let's go back and let's change it to how we wanted it to look. Click in the cell, click FX. And I mean, this is a great way of editing any function whatsoever. You click on the cell, click on the FX, and you get the entire dialog box. So it's much easier to edit the cell. Let's come down here where it has 0. Get rid of that. So we want an inexact match. Come up here to our fill handle, copy it down. So once again, like this second example of VLOOKUP, the difference, and really the one and only difference, is that we located our table array, which no matter what, you always have to know where that's located. We located our table array, we highlighted it, and we created a named range for that table array. And basically what it does, it really makes it much easier in the sense that we don't have to be highlighting and re-highlighting areas. And then more importantly, we don't have to worry about forgetting to lock in the table array, which is a common mistake. Thank you.